What's up top 10 fam, hope you're having an awesome day. I'm your host Ayman Hassan and welcome back to another video. If I had $1 for every time the government covered something up, I could single-handedly save us from climate change. I swear down, no exaggeration at all. There have been countless instances worldwide throughout history of the government fooling their citizens, but that ends here and that ends today. Fooled we will be no longer. And just a quick shout out to one of our subscribers, Manuel Sarabia, for giving us today's video idea, you the best. But without further ado, these are the top 10 scary government cover-ups. Starting us off at number 10 is the gaydar machine. Can you actually believe it? Because I certainly couldn't, what even? And this one was a Canadian one as well that just hurt even more. I'm really happy about our position on the LGBTQIA community right now. Back in the day and back in the 60s, it was a different story. Paranoid as hell about sexual orientation, the Canadian government waged a crusade against homosexuals and excluding them from public service, the military and the RCMP. They thought homosexuals had a character weakness that made them vulnerable to blackmail from Soviet agents. They paid university professor Frank Robert Wake to create the fruit machine, which was essentially a bunch of homosexuality tests developed by the government security panel. Can you imagine? What the f? The fruit machine was basically you getting called into a room and them telling you they're testing the rate of your stress levels using the machine. You'd get asked a bunch of questions, then shown pornographic pictures, and the scientists would note your heart, perspiration and breathing rate, your pupillary responses, and your skin reflexes. And now hundreds of people lost their jobs in the first few years without being told why. And can you imagine 9,000 people were investigated and you bet your ass a lot of them were gay. As the homosexual panic finally died down, the project lost its funding and an apology violating people's rights was issued by the government, but that's pretty much about it. That's the only thing they acknowledged. Shocking behavior. If I do say so myself, Canada. Shocking. Coming in at number 9 is the Franklin child prostitution ring. So this child prostitution ring lasted from the late 80s to the early 90s and allegedly involved many members of the Republican Party like Lawrence King, who ran the Franklin Community Federal Credit Union, and even President George H.W. Bush. According to the investigation, the victims were kids in foster care who were flown to the East Coast to be sexually abused at secret parties. Now, King was the one that transported the kids who would not only be sexually abused, but would be beaten and sometimes even murdered. The claims focused on King and how the ring was a cult of Satan worshippers killing, mutilating, sacrificing, and eating kids. A 2-year investigation followed, and it was concluded that the allegations didn't have enough evidence and that the witnesses just weren't credible. Either way, King was still jailed for 4.5 years for embezzling funds, so at least someone got their karma and justice. Not enough people, but somebody at least. At number 8, we have the Potyomkin village. I think that was pretty good. Anyway, now this is probably one of the first few government cover-ups of all time, so we're taking it back, folks. So back at the end of the 18th century, Grigory Potyomkin, a Russian minister, military leader, and nobleman, became the governor of Crimea after it was annexed from the Ottoman Empire. But of course, it was obviously some juicy gossip on the side, and he wanted to impress Catherine II badly. They were lovers, and as Russia's longest ruling woman, the bar was definitely set damn high. When she visited Crimea in 1787, Grigory erected a fancy-ass fake village to impress her, essentially. Along the Dnieper River, Dnieper, I'm not really sure, Crimea had honestly been destroyed by the war, so he had to pull something out of the bag and quick. Catherine saw the structures from afar, and they were meant to be disassembled after she passed them and then reassembled farther along for her to see again. So she's out in Crimea thinking she's surrounded by bouginess and a wealthy region, and he even got serfs to walk around in fancy clothes to make the place look more rich, when it was low-key approaching a massive famine real quick. So the structures he basically erected were fake, very fancy buildings that had nothing inside, so that's basically what she was seeing from afar. Now, people have claimed the story was exaggerated or simply a legend, but from it came the term Potyomkin village, and it basically signifies any deceptive or false construct built solely to deceive citizens, rulers, and other regimes that reality is better than it actually is. There you go, the more you know. Filling our number 7 slot is Bohemian Grove. Okay, I'd never heard of this one before, so hopefully you guys haven't either. Bohemian Grove is actually a campground located in Monte Rio, California. It's owned by the Bohemian Club, and every July the camp hosts a 2-week 2-week encampment whose guests include some of the most prominent important men in the world, including a lot of world leaders. Past guests have been people like Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, and so forth. You can actually visit the camp all year round except during the 2-week encampment, and genuinely no one has any idea what goes on during these 2 weeks. Legitimately, no one. The club's patron saint is John of Nepomuk, who died instead of giving away any secrets of the Queen, and that kind of symbolizes the secrecy of the members. Speculation about what goes on at the camp had been rife. There's been rumors of cannibalism, orgies, satanic rituals, the whole shebang. At one point, the Franklin child prostitution ring was even linked to the camp, despite no evidence ever being found at the Grove. Hey, you know what they say, what happens at Bohemian Grove clearly stays at Bohemian Grove. Now at number 6 is pollution. Now this is probably the most recent one on our list since it happened in May of this year. Local governments in China have been helping businesses hide illegal dumping by fabricating environmental reports and tricking central government inspectors. After launching an investigation last year, they exposed thousands and thousands of violations of environmental regulations in 10 provinces. Now China's been trying to improve environmentally for a while now, and they've genuinely been doing a good job, or so we thought, or so they thought too. In Anhui, one of the provinces, fake diamond manufacturers were dumping hazardous solid waste as well as wastewater. The central government fined each province based on how much they lied, essentially, and handed out 80 million yuan in fines. You get 'em, China. You get 'em. Coming in at number 5 is the Loch Ness Monster. So back in 1934, a Scottish doctor was frantic as he claimed he saw a horrific monster deep in Loch Ness. He got his camera and took that black and white shot that's basically become the Loch Ness Monster's profile picture for life. The dark shape swimming in the water looks like a brontosaurus just chilling and swimming about. The photo caused so much public excitement that many people went there and reported seeing it themselves. Now I know the Loch Ness Monster is a bit of a myth, legend, superstar, but according to someone in the Scottish government, it may not have been entirely false. Former Scottish Police Chief William Fraser said that there is some strange creature in Loch Ness seems now beyond doubt, but that the police have any power to protect it is very doubtful. Now I know that's not an outright admittance, but it's pretty damn close. Why are you hiding Nessie from us, government? That was me, thank you very much. At number 4 is John Lennon. May he rest in peace. As a member of the little old band of the Beatles, John Lennon was infamous. He protested war, promoted peace, and was a bit of a state enemy according to the FBI. So it was no surprise when they put him on their watch list right before the 1972 Republican National Convention. Senator Strom Thurmond suggested terminating his visa and deporting him, and that's exactly what they did. The FBI monitored his every move, his TV appearances, his concerts. They even followed Yoko Ono and her daughter, who wasn't even John's daughter. As you can imagine, John wasn't even doing anything shady except spreading love, and the FBI closed the investigation after stalking him and realizing Nixon was gonna get re-elected. They never admitted to even having Lennon on their watch list, but after his assassination, John Weiner, a historian, fought a long and hard 14-year battle to try and get the FBI to release their Lennon files, which they finally did, and hence the cover-up was not so covered up anymore. Filling our number 3 slot is the Tuskegee syphilis experiment. So between 1932 and 1972, the US Public Health Service undertook one of the most unethical medical experiments ever. The study was of how untreated syphilis in African American men affected and damaged their bodies. The 600 impoverished volunteers were told they were receiving free healthcare from the government. 399 of them had syphilis while the others did not. They were told the study would last 6 months, but joke's on them because it ended up lasting 40 years. None of the men diagnosed were actually told they had syphilis, and the study didn't include treating the men either. It was just about monitoring how their bodies got worse with time, which is just sadistic. Even after the cure for syphilis was found, they still didn't treat the men. They were just told they were being treated for bad blood. Now between 28 and 100 men died in the study, but the death toll could have been higher since they could have infected each other unknowingly. By the mid-60s, Pete Buxton, a government social worker, started reading the internal reports about the study and found it extremely unethical. Thank you, the only sane person in this study. He complained to higher ups about it, yet they did absolutely jack After years of inaction, he handed over proof of the study to people at the Associated Press, which forced the PHS to shut it down in 1972. The next year, the government had to settle $10 million worth of lawsuits brought forward by survivors, the families of those that didn't survive, and so forth. 10 million! I would have sued for so much more. Not getting away with that. Nah, B. Not under my watch. No, 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 no. Now at number 2 is Chernobyl. Now I feel like I generally do not even have to explain this one. Everyone knows what happened to Chernobyl, and if you don't, what the hell are you doing? I must admit the HBO series was overhyped for me personally, but it was number 1 in the world for a while, so definitely watch it if you haven't. Either way, in April of 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine ran a routine test that they technically shouldn't have done, but did so anyway. While doing the test, the reactor malfunctioned and the reactor core itself actually exploded. That one explosion caused tons of radiation and radioactive gas and debris to circulate in the air, affecting people in the area and people far from it. The scientists in charge at the time refused to believe the reactor core had blown up and was proper in denial. Even after workers went in there and saw the blown up core in person, he didn't believe it. So thinking it wasn't as bad as it was, he told the plant owner it wasn't that bad, who told government officials it wasn't that bad, who told the locals of Pripyat it wasn't that bad. So these innocent kids and families and pets were roaming around this critically dangerous radioactive city for days before finding out the truth. And when the government leaves you exposed to toxic radiation just to cover their own ass, that's how you know the world is screwed entirely. And finally, at number 1 is the May Lai Massacre, also known as the most shocking episode of the Vietnam War ever. So during the Vietnam War, which was fought between North and South Vietnam, but really fought between the US and their capitalist allies and the Soviet Union and their communist allies. On the 16th of March 1968, the May Lai Massacre took place when armed US soldiers went into the Son Tin district and killed between 350 to 500 plus unarmed people. That includes men, women, kids, infants, and most of the women were gang raped, their bodies mutilated. Even girls as young as 11 years old were given no mercy. The Charlie Company went in there thinking men from the Viet Cong were hiding in there, and Captain Ernest Medina told his men that all the civilians would have to be at the market by 7 AM and that everyone else that was there were either VC troops or VC sympathizers, and they were to be wiped out. The battle was reported as routine by everyone involved, but a helicopter gunner was suspicious about the origins of the battle, so he sent a letter to Congress asking them to investigate, and investigate they did. Okay, so I actually learned this when I studied international law, go me, but in the UN Charter, under war crimes, combatants cannot kill civilians. They can't kill unarmed civilians. They can't even kill enemies if they've surrendered. So this whole thing was so illegal, it's not even funny. Most of the officers were charged but then acquitted, and war crimes are literally one of the crimes against humanity, and I feel like the men in charge that were involved really didn't get punished enough for that, but they should have. And that's it for today's video, guys. I know there are a few on the list that you guys would have obviously heard of, but I was trying to make it as unique as possible since I hadn't heard of a lot of these, so hopefully you guys didn't too. Let me know in the comments below which one you were most surprised by, and as always, I'm your host Ayman Hassan, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!